All right. Well, everyone excited? Ready?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, good. So here's what we're going to do. So today's class, think about it somewhat as like so far some of the stuff that we've covered is like we talked about some time management things, and then we talked also about which Jason had taught you guys on setting appointments and those type of things. So today we're going to talk about, okay, now I've got an appointment. What do I do? But this is going to be a little bit different than probably anything else you've ever heard in terms of doing like a buyer appointment or a listing appointment. We're going to talk mostly buyers today, but the process that we're going to go through and talk about is going to be different than probably anything you have seen before. So actually, as we get started, so let me just make sure for you guys on Zoom, make sure you put name in the chat box so that I have a record of who showed up. I've had 2 times this week that people have contacted me saying that they have attended the class, and then I go back and look through the sign-in sheet, which so I guess I've been able to make sure you guys did. But I go back and I look at the sign-in sheet and they're not on it, and I'm like, I don't think you attended it. So anyway, so just make sure you do that. So for you guys on Zoom, throw that in there. All right. So here's where I want to start with though. So for today, here's how we're going to start. Let's assume that you have gotten an appointment to meet with a buyer. Okay, so you're going to assume we've set an appointment with a buyer. Doesn't matter where from. So I don't care what type of a buyer appointment or where you met the people, but they've now come to the office. You've exchanged niceties. You're sitting down with them, and you're now going to start to talk to them about what they're looking for in a home. So what I want you guys to do is write down 2 or 3 questions, and you can do it in your phone or whatever, but write down 2 or 3 questions that you would ask of a buyer that would help you to know what they're looking for in a home. So hopefully that makes sense. So what 2 or 3 questions would you ask of a buyer at that first meeting that's going to help you know what they're looking for in a home? Now we'll come back to this later on, and I'll have you guys share some of what you write down, but think of it as there's not necessarily a wrong answer on this. I think everybody signed in that's here, right?
I don't think Linda has. Is that your name?
No, it's Brenda, but I didn't think. Yeah.
Okay.
So Linda has not, but Brenda did.
Oh, sorry. I missed that.
Yeah, no, it's all good. Okay, so writing down 2 or 3 questions that are going to help you know, like, what question would you ask, or questions would you ask that's then going to help you to know what to go then show them in properties. Does that make sense what I'm having you think? Okay, now while you guys are doing that, I'm going to write down here, we're going to start this by talking about the top. This marker's not working very well. I think my job in life is to get rid of markers that don't work. All right, so we're going to talk about top 3 complaints that people have about real estate agents. So what would you guess are the top 3 complaints that people have about real estate agents?
They're just in it for the money.
Okay, that we're just in it for the money. Okay, good. That's not one of the top 3, might be number 4.
Communication.
Good. So yes, and technically all 3 of these deal with that. So I'll give you number 1 is that we don't return calls. And then Derek, I think I heard you say number 2.
Don't listen.
Yep, number 2 is that we don't listen. So the top complaint that they have first, number 1 complaint that people have about agents is that we don't return calls. Now, you've probably experienced that already. As you try to contact agents, you don't get a call back. So that's number 1. Number 2 then is that we don't listen. And then number 3 is somewhat related to that, but it's that we waste their time. So the 3rd complaint about agents is that we waste their time. Now, typically, I know most of you guys are newer agents, but typically when I say that in a classroom that has a lot of seasoned agents, and I say that they're the number 3 complaint that the consumers have about us is that we waste their time. Usually what happens is people go, no, they waste our time. So recognize though that the experience that the consumer has with you is number 1, you're not going to return their calls. Number 2 is that you don't listen to what they have to say. And then number 3 is that we waste their time. Now, remember I said at the start of this that we're going to approach this a little differently than probably anything you've ever heard before in terms of a buyer presentation or working with a client. Part of that is because we first have to understand this, that why would the consumer, why would our clients have the experience that we don't listen to them and that we waste their time? So why do you think they would feel like we don't listen and that we waste their time? Okay, good. That you're exactly right, is that the biggest reason is because we don't ask enough questions. And more so than that though, even that we don't ask enough questions, we don't ask questions that are relevant to them. Now, I'm about to make a statement that you're probably going to laugh at, and that's okay. And if you don't, then that's okay too. But is it okay if we let the buyer buy the home they want, not the one you think they should get? So you guys, I see some heads nodding. Yes, but here's what I'm telling you. The reason they have the experience that we don't listen and that we waste their time is because of this. You and I tend to be more concerned about what's important to us than we are concerned about what's important to the client. And here's the other side of this. We typically are going to approach it from a standpoint that is, we think we're doing them a service by what we're doing. But the reason that we do it is because we think they'll thank us later on. Now, let me give you an example of what I mean by this. I was reading an article and I'm kicking myself that I didn't print this off and save it, because I didn't think about this class when I read the article. And then later on, like the next time I taught the class, I got up here and I started talking about this, and it hit me, oh, I read this great article, and then I've never been able to find it again. But here's basically what it said, is that all of us, you and I, we all believe that eventually everyone will figure out we were right. Every one of us thinks that way. And it doesn't matter what it is. If it's politics, doesn't matter if it's religion, I don't care what it is. Every single one of us assumes that eventually everyone is going to figure out we were right. Now, because we feel that way, because all of us feel like that eventually people are going to figure out that we were right, what happens then is when we're working with a client, we start to project onto them the things that we think are important. Well, here's what happens then, is that creates a scenario that they feel like we didn't listen to what they had to say and that we are therefore now wasting their time. Now, so that's piece one of what we're going to talk about. So kind of think about this first little bit. I'm going to put some pieces in place and think of it as like building a house or something. Is like I'm putting the foundation into what we're going to talk about today. And we're gonna just build brick upon brick upon brick. Okay. So now here's the next question for you. How would you respond if I said to you, nobody buys anything they don't need? Would you agree with that, or would you disagree with that? That nobody buys anything they don't need? I was gonna say, it's almost like you guys think I'm trapping you or something. So, okay, Derek says he doesn't agree. Does anybody else disagree with that statement? Nobody buys anything they don't need. Who agrees with it? So who agrees first? Okay, who disagrees? Who
disagree.
doesn't want to say anything at all?
Aaron told me to keep my mouth shut, so I gotta follow him.
Oh, Aaron just said, don't say anything, huh?
Right.
Okay.
So even though I want to say a couple things, but I need to keep my mouth shut. Because he's my broker, agent, whatever.
Okay.
So keep quiet.
Okay, so Derek, you're the only one who's been dared to say you disagree, so tell me more.
So, and this is in regards to anything, like, right?
Yeah, anything. Nobody buys anything they don't need. So give me an example.
Of why I disagree with that.
Yeah. Give me an example, or just an example of somebody that bought something they didn't need.
Yeah, I mean, it happens daily. The things that
Yep.
we need are food and water and the very basic things, but the things that we want is everything else, which is everything else. I don't know. So going to the store and buying extra of anything, you don't need that thing, but it's a want,
Okay.
right? When you go to the mall. Basically, anytime you go to the mall, it's probably not a need, right? It's probably a want, unless you legit don't have shoes. Or, if you're going barefoot into the mall, then okay,
Then you probably need
it's a
shoes.
need, right?
Okay.
Other than that, it's probably a want.
Okay, so can anybody give me an example of something you bought that you don't need?
Like golf clubs.
Okay, perfect. This is perfect. So you bought golf clubs and you don't need them.
Right.
Great. Will you bring them to the office tomorrow and give them to me?
Yeah.
You will?
Yeah, sure.
For real?
Yeah,
Okay.
they're old.
Oh,
You can have them.
well, then I don't know if I want
Well,
them.
you didn't have them.
If they're old. Yeah, I don't know if I want them.
Okay, all right, fine.
Okay, so, but
If they were nice,
here's the thing. Okay, so
Right,
good. Say that
right.
again.
If they were nice, right? Then probably.
So if they were a nice set of golf clubs, but you don't need them,
Right,
but you wouldn't give them to me.
not for free.
Okay, well, so now here's part of where I'm going with this, is what do we do with stuff we don't need? So his old golf clubs, what do we do with stuff we don't need? When you
Throw it
don't
away.
need something anymore, what do you do with it?
Throw it away.
You throw it away, right? We don't sell it,
Right.
we throw it away. So part of where I'm going with this is when I say nobody buys anything they don't need, part of what I want you to remember is this. There are two types of needs. Now, so Derek said it one way, I'm going to say it a little different, but the same concept. There's two types of needs. We have real needs. Our real needs are food, shelter, clothing. Those are real needs, right? Everything else after that, after we talk about food, shelter, clothes, to breathe, all that kind of stuff, everything else are perceived needs. So you said it as wants, but really those are perceived needs. Now, the reason I'm saying that they're a perceived need is because we justify it in our own mind of why we need the thing. And then therefore we will then go and buy it. Because if we didn't need it, and now I'm talking not a real need, but a perceived need, we wouldn't go buy it. We wouldn't if we didn't think we needed it. So there's two types of needs. There are real needs and there are perceived needs. Now, the reason this is important is because as you work with clients, you're going to hear them talk about things that they need, because it's not important to you, you're going to perceive it as, well, that's you don't need that. But you need to understand that for them, it is a real need. It's not a real need like food, shelter, clothes, but in their mind, it's a real need. They need this. Does that make sense? Okay. Now let's go to the next level of this. So the next piece of this that we're going to go to is this. Now, remember, I'm going to keep referencing back to what we're talking about is the experience that the consumer has with you is that you don't listen and you waste their time. So we're going to keep going back and forth to these two here. And I'm going to show you why they have the experience. Then from there, I'm going to show you how do we avoid them from having the experience that you're not listening to them and you're wasting their time. So here's the next question for you guys. So let's assume, so we're going to assume for a minute, you're a buyer of a house. I'm your agent. I brought you in, or actually, no, let's do it this way. Let's do it the other way around. You're the agent. You guys are the agent. I'm the buyer. Okay. I've come to your office. we're sitting down now and we're gonna talk about what I want to buy in a home. You ask me those 2 or 3 questions that I had you guys write down. And here's what you gather from it, okay? Is I want to buy a home that is high on a hill with a view of the city lights. Okay, so as we've talked, what we've landed on is I want to buy a home that's high on a hill with a view of the city lights. So now it's time for you to go find properties for me. And you don't need to tell me specifics, like I don't need to know a specific area, but just in general, if I said I wanted to buy a home high on a hill with a view of the city lights, what are you now going to go show me in terms of properties? You're going to show me properties that are
I don't know with the lights.
is every one of us, that's what we're gonna do, right? If I said to you, I want to buy a home high on a hill with a view of the city lights, you're gonna go show me properties that are high on a hill with a view of city lights. Now be the buyer for a minute. So now, for now, I want you guys to be the buyer, and everybody gets to answer, okay? And you can use the same answer as somebody else, but I want everyone, including you guys that are on Zoom, to answer this question. Why would you want to buy a home high on a hill with a view of the city lights? So now, if you wouldn't want that, then just tell me why you think somebody would want to buy a home high on a hill with a view of the city lights. Mariano.
I would imagine you want to be away from the people, so privacy.
Okay, so privacy, good. Why else? Why else? Why?
Yeah, privacy, but community, having people that live in that area, you're probably looking for a sense of community. We'll say, yeah.
Status. Okay, good.
We'll say social status.
Okay,
A good way to unwind from the day.
a good way to unwind. And now, so say more about that. What do you mean by that?
Go get home, like go relax and look out the view.
Okay, good.
Look at the lights.
Brenda?
Maybe they like to entertain.
Okay, entertain, good. Why would you want, I'm giving you permission to answer this one, even though Aaron told you not to.
Okay, you got me off guard.
I'll come back to you then. Just listen to, so why would you want to buy a home high on a hill with a view of the city lights?
That's what the customer told you that he wanted.
No, why would you want to buy it?
Oh,
If, let's assume you wanted one, why would you want it?
the view, I suppose.
Okay, but what about the view? What would the view do for you?
It's different than other homes, and the view would give me some enjoyment
Okay,
to observe.
good.
Entertainment.
Entertainment, okay. And tell me your name.
Jocelyn.
Jocelyn, okay, cool.
I just enjoy looking at the view.
Okay, but why? What is,
Pleasure.
okay,
Pleasurable.
good. Michelle,
I'm retired and I have a lot of time at home.
okay, but so what?
So I like enjoying the view.
Okay, but what would it do for you?
Bring peace.
Okay, good, perfect. What about you guys? Tell me your names too, even though I probably won't remember all 3 of them. Down, okay? Why you want a home?
I think it would bring a lot of value, so we resell the next.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
That's fine. It could be the same. That's okay.
Relaxing, away from the busyness.
Okay, good. Excellent. All right, welcome. You get to answer a question for me though.
Okay.
It's Parker, right?
Yes.
Why would you want a home high on a hill with a view of the city lights?
Best home there is.
Okay, but what would it do for you? So I know I'm throwing, like, you have no clue what we're talking about. I
No.
get it, but
Why would I want?
why would you want a home high on a hill with a view of the city lights?
The view? The view's what I
Okay.
want and what everyone else wants.
But why? Why would you want it?
Because the view.
You're like, I'm never coming to class again. That's why. But what does the view do for you?
Do you feel like you're on top of the world?
Yeah, you feel like you're on top of the world, and it's just like, okay, I gotta wake up and see this view every day. Like,
Okay.
who wouldn't want that?
Okay, good. And tell me your name.
Anna.
Anna, okay, why you want it, Anna?
It's pretty,
Okay, but what does that do for you?
brings you happiness.
Okay, good. Okay, good. Okay, what about you guys on Zoom? Did you guys throw either unmute or throw?
I like to look down at all the little people below me
Okay, I love it, Sean. That's good. Okay,
but it's because it's peaceful and calming and I'm closer to the sky, so I'll probably have less light pollution. so I can see the stars better.
Very good. And Megan said for the clear view, space away, privacy status. Okay, good. Miriam, what about you?
Privacy,
Privacy. Okay, good.
good neighborhood, so yeah.
Okay, perfect. So now that everybody's given me some reasons why you want it. Now, let's talk about this for a minute. Now, remember, I got to remind you, what we are talking about today is why is it that a client, specifically, we're talking buyers today. So keep in mind, here's the thing. Part of what I need to make sure you guys understand from me, when I say buyer, that includes the seller of a house, because whether we're helping somebody buy a house or sell their house, they're really buying our services. Okay, so just kind of keep in mind most of the time when I say buyer, I'm referring to a seller as well. Now, and typically I will clarify if I'm meaning something different. But so here's what I want to make sure you guys understand is that specifically when we're working with the buyer of a house and they then tell us why they want to buy a certain type of a home, we listen to what they said, but then they have the experience that we didn't listen and that we go out and we waste their time. So now let me show you what I mean by that, okay? What happens is this. So I said to you, I want to buy a home high on a hill with a view of the city lights. I then asked you guys, what are you going to go now show me? And you said, houses that are high on a hill with a view of the city lights, correct?
Right.
Now, so you're going to go do that. So we go out and we look at houses. And as we're looking at houses, I do what buyers do. And I go, okay, yeah, that was nice. And you say, do you want to write an offer? And I say, nah, no, not on this one. Let's go look at the next one. We go to the next one. We look at it and I go, no, it's okay. Now, all along the way, what's happening is this, and it may not be as obvious as what I'm going to say to you right now, but keep in mind, this is somewhat the experience that they're having. Remember, I asked you why you wanted a home high on a hill with a view of the city lights and asked you to tell me why you would want it, and you all gave me a reason. Here's what happens. When you and I go look at the house, you're now going to talk about that house from the standpoint of why you would want that house. Okay, you're going to talk about it from the standpoint of why you would want the house. Remember I said, is it okay if we let them buy the house they want, not the one you think they should buy? Well, this is what I'm referring to, is because we go out and we think we're doing them a favor by telling them the things we like about the house, what we would want the house for. But that then creates this scenario that they feel like we didn't listen and we waste their time. Now, so now let me take you to the next level of this. So you go out and show me properties and I don't buy. We go out another time and we look at properties and you're showing me houses high on a hill with a view of the city lights and I don't buy, and I don't buy, and I don't buy. And you keep showing me properties high on a hill with a view of the city lights and I don't buy. Then I call you one day and I go, Trey, I think I found the house. So here's the MLS number. Can we go see it right away? So now as soon as I give you the MLS number, what are you going to do? You go look it up. So Trey goes and he looks it up, but we'll assume it's you. Okay. You go and you look it up. When you pull it up and look at the picture on the MLS, the house is not high on a hill with a view of the city lights. Instead, it's tucked away in a canyon surrounded by nothing but trees. What is going through your mind when you go to the MLS and you pull it up and the house is totally opposite? Because I said I wanted a home high on a hill with a view of the city lights, and this was in a canyon tucked away with a view of nothing but trees.
They don't know what they want. So at first I'm thinking, yeah, you don't really know what you want. You were telling me this, but then I'm thinking I didn't dig deep enough.
Okay, well, that's the truth.
Right.
That's right. But typically what's happening is we start to think, okay, they don't know what they want. There you go.
Just thinking that they didn't care as much for the view of the city lights as we thought. Because we didn't dig deep enough.
Okay, good. So now we go look at the house. And you go show me the house. And after we get done looking at the house, I say, this is perfect. Write the offer, Trey. Full price or way over list price, whatever. I want the house. Now, here's what tends to happen. After I have gone and done that. So we've now gone and you've shown me this property. I said, yes, I want to buy it. You write the offer, I buy it, I close. Then there is a term in real estate that you have either said yourself or you've heard. And if you haven't, you will hear, that sounds like this: buyers are liars. Who's have either said that or heard it? Only a few, really? Okay. So here's the question for you. Is it true? Are buyers liars?
Yes.
It is.
Hell yeah.
Yes.
And Miriam not only said, yeah, but hell yeah. All right. What about the rest of you? What do you think?
I'm gonna say no, we just didn't dig deep enough.
Yeah, so here's the thing. From today forward, I want you guys, because you're either going to say this at some point, or you're going to hear other agents in the office say to you, buyers are liars. And here, from today forward, here's what I want you to think about, is that's not true. Instead, what the real issue is we, the agent, whoever you hear say that term, buyers are liars, really what they're saying to you is, I'm not a very good communicator. That's really what they're saying to you, is that they have not been trained to communicate. Now, here's why. What happens is this. Here's where this whole thing comes from, is this. So let me show you what this looks like. Here's what happens is, assume for a minute, this is your brain, okay? So what I've just drawn up here, this is your brain. 10% of who you are as a personality is conscious. 10% of who you are is conscious. 90% of who you are is unconscious. Okay? So 90% of you is unconscious. What that means is this. There has been a lot of programming that has gone on with you as you grew up. There used to be a program, and maybe it's still around, but I haven't heard of it for a long time. There used to be a program here in Salt Lake area that was called Success by 6. And the idea behind that program of Success by 6 was, we're putting a lot of the programming in place by the time we're 6 years old that is then going to guide us for the rest of our life. Is the idea of this program that they had, is we want to create success by 6 by programming kids so that they would be successful. Well, the reason for that is because 10% of who you are is conscious, 90% is unconscious, meaning that you're doing things without thinking about it. Here's the proof of this. If you have ever had this experience, raise your hand, okay? You get in a car with a friend and you're going to drive somewhere, and you pre-program, you tell yourself, okay, we're going to go to downtown Salt Lake. You got in the car, you start to drive, and you're having a conversation with the friend, and you guys get into a really good conversation. Next thing you know, you're at your destination and you have no remembrance of the trip. If you can relate to that, raise your hand. Okay, so pretty much everybody can relate to that. How did you get there? Like, how did you not run red lights, die, stuff like that?
Subconscious.
Yeah, what happened is we pre-programmed the brain where we were going. Now you have to have known how to get there, or know how to get there in order for that to have happened. But you could pre-program the brain, this is where I'm going, and then you can start to have this conversation and it gets you there. Now, here's what happens though. Now, how does that relate to us and what I'm talking about right now? When you ask somebody what they're looking for in a home, here's what happens. The way communication works is, let me back up for one. I got to put one more piece in place. At this level, the 10% level, this conscious level, is where things are logical, they're reasonable, they're rational. Okay, that's where everything is logical, reasonable, rational. Down here in the unconscious is where things are illogical, irrational, unreasonable. Now, so remember I started this thing by saying to you guys, nobody buys anything they don't need. See, what happens is this. The need comes down here in this unconscious level is where the need comes from. But then when we say they bought golf clubs that they didn't need, it's because we're thinking at this rational, logical level to where I didn't need it. But there is something emotion. So think of it that way. This is where the logic resides. This is where the emotion is. Somebody buying a house, is that typically an emotional purchase? So here's what happens. The reason they have this experience that we don't listen and we waste their time is because what they're wanting to purchase is down here in the unconscious. We ask them then, so where do you want to live? Or what type of house do you want to live in? Any of those type of questions, which are designed to get to at this level. Well, they don't know how to tell you. In fact, actually, let me ask you this. How many of you have heard this from a buyer? I don't know how to explain it, but I'll know it when I see it. Who's heard a buyer say that before? See, when you hear them say that, when they say to you, I don't know how to explain it, but I'll know it when I see it, what they're telling you is the information is stored here in the unconscious, but I don't know how to put it to you in a way that would make sense. Therefore, I'll know it when I see it. So here's what happens though. The way that you and I have been trained to communicate is like this. We ask them a question at this level. They then take the information from down here, try to put it at a way that would make logical, reasonable sense. They then communicate that over here to you. You then take that information, put it into your conscious 10% level, then you interpret what that means to you down here. Now, remember, I said to you guys, I had you share with me, why would you want to buy a home high on a hill with a view of the city lights? And you went through and told me the reasons you would want that house. See, here's what happens is they want to buy it for one reason. They communicate it to you at a level that will make sense. You interpret it at this level here that would make sense.
Sorry, Russ, I'm still in half your class.
Well, sorry, I apologize to you guys for what you're gonna get compared to what you would have gotten.
That's true, right?
So I'm sorry. I feel sorry for you.
We had said it originally in here, we forgot that it was your class.
Oh. Well,
So, sorry.
it's a good commercial for him to come back.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey Russ, just take care of these guys, will you?
I don't believe you.
Hi.
We're going on the second.
Okay.
Are you staying or leaving?
I guess I'm going. I'm
All right.
sad to go though.
Anybody else want to
This
leave?
is good stuff.
I'm just. All right,
Are you
well, come
bringing
back
donuts?
next time. What?
Are you providing donuts? I'll stay.
I'm doing better than that.
Yeah.
I'm providing income to you. I'm
I'm
not
a good
giving you
answer.
a fish, I'm teaching you to fish. Yeah. All right. Yeah, I don't feel bad at all. Okay. Good, now we got rid of the distractions.
Yeah.
Now we can. All right, so, is this making sense though, what I'm saying so far? Brenda? Okay,
Yeah, well, I'm just like, this is literally what I do. Anytime I do a consult with my clients, they tell me what they want and I'm like, why?
okay, good, yeah,
Why
good,
is that important to you?
awesome, good.
Just one thing that that we have to do is digging 3 deep on everything, because digging 3 deep gets you into that
Perfect.
subconscious area,
Perfect,
which will then force it to the top.
good, yeah, and I'm gonna say more about that, so yeah, we'll come back, so perfect.
Yeah.
But, so here's what happens, so now, let me ask you this question. I had mentioned to you that I wanted to buy a home high on hill with a view of the city lights. I then had Trey go show me this property in a canyon surrounded by nothing but trees. So here's the question for you guys. Did I buy what I originally wanted?
Yes.
Okay, I
Yes and
have,
no.
I have a yes and a no and some heads shaking.
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily, okay? So those who say I didn't, why? Or that shook your head, why?
Because you explicitly said you wanted a house on the hill with the view of the city lights when you thought you wanted that, but you really just wanted, in my case, the entertainment, where another house like in a canyon could also do that.
Okay, perfect. That's right where I was going. Excellent, Trey. So, so now, let me ask you this. So go back to whatever you said you would have wanted the home high on a hill with the view of the city lights for. Could you get the same thing which is why when you said, yeah, when you said, well, I like the view. And I said, but why? What is it about the view that you liked? The reason for me doing that was because I wanted to get to, which goes to your 3 questions deep. I wanted to get out of this level and get into this level. So what does a view of the city lights do for you? And you said, and pleasurable or peace or whatever the different things that you guys said. So then that's where I say, could you get the same thing from a home in a canyon surrounded by nothing but trees? And could you entertain there? Would that work? And almost always the answer is yes. that you could get that same thing. Because see, what they're buying is that, not what they said they wanted. They're buying, so think of it this way, is the reason we call this needs analysis class is because we're going to talk about their needs, but really what they want is the benefit or the benefits. They start by telling you a need, or think of it this way, actually, I'm going to write it this way instead. What they tell you they want is a feature, but they're not buying the feature. A home high on a hill with a view of the city lights is a feature. But they aren't buying the feature, they're buying the benefit that it provides. So think of it that way, as features provide a benefit. And so when they say to you that they're wanting a home high on a hill with a view of the city lights, you have to find out why they want it, which is why you're saying why do you want it? We have to get to the why to be able to land on the benefit. Now, I'm probably not going to give these to you today. In fact, I know I won't. But Thursday, I'm going to give you, there are 15 benefits. So essentially, when somebody is buying a home, what they're really buying is one of 15 benefits. Now, the truth is they buy in 2s and 3s. So typically, think of it this way, is when somebody's going to go buy a house, there are 2 or 3 benefits that they're looking for in that house. That's what they're buying, not the feature. So the reason when I say buyers are not liars, even though agents will say buyers are liars, let me give you another example of this from my own. Personally, I do not like a split entry home. And even more than that, I would never buy a home without a garage. So how often, before I learned all of this, how often do you think I helped somebody buy a home that was a split entry without a garage? Hardly ever. Because remember I said it's subtle. The way that we go about this influencing or projecting onto people is subtle, but it gives them this experience that we don't listen and we waste their time. Where that comes from is little things like this. Of if I was working with a buyer and I said, hey, what style of home do you want? Typically, I probably, before I learned all this, I would have said, you don't want a split entry, right? Now, why would the person probably most likely say, oh yeah, no, I don't want a split entry? If I said, what style of home do you want? You don't want a split entry, right?
Because you're making it look like it's something bad.
Yeah, and why would they care if I think it's bad? That's right. That's right, is because they're looking to, like, there must be something I know that they don't. So where this whole thing hit home to me was I had a client that way, that I had told them, basically, you don't want a split entry. So we go out and look at properties, they don't like them, and not only that, but I personally would never buy a home in Utah without a garage. That's just me. But because of that, I then am going to tend to project that onto people that they wouldn't want to buy a house without a garage either. So I had these clients that I was showing properties to. They wouldn't buy. The scenario that I gave to you is what happens. They call me up. We found the house. Great. Give me the MLS number or the address. They give it to me. I go plug it in on the MLS, pull it up, split entry, no garage. And I'm like, and I remember I was like, okay, let's go look at it. We go look at it. They said, yes, we want to buy it. I write the offer. They buy it. And I remember I went back to the office, and this is where all of this stuff then hit home to me. As I went back to the office, and I remember I said to one of the agents, buyers are liars. These guys told me they did not want a split entry without a garage, and then I just wrote an offer. We just closed or got accepted, I guess, the offer on a home that was a split entry without a garage. And then I started to realize all of this stuff that we were talking about, that here's the problem, is we tend to communicate one thing when we mean something else. So that's another key piece of this. We tend to communicate one thing when really what we mean is something else. We're meaning something from down here. There's something behind the feature. So when they're telling you the feature they want, there's really more to the feature than what they're saying. And that's what they really want. And there's a benefit to it. Does that make sense? Okay, so now let me show you the next piece of this. So here's the next part. So we talked about this being your brain. We're gonna get a little more realistic to your brain. It's not a square anymore, at least. Okay, and even this isn't really actually the way it works, but for me, training you, it's the best way for you to understand. So this is your brain. Our brain stores information in discrete locations. So your brain stores the pictures in one area. The decisions you have made are stored in another area. And then the feelings are in another area. Okay? So what happens is this, when you and I have an experience, or even just growing up, remember I said that there's, up here I said there's a whole lot of programming that goes on. Part of that programming is the decisions that we make, or the way that we picture things, or the way we feel about things. So when you have an experience, what happens is your brain takes that experience, it then compartmentalizes that experience. So meaning it breaks it apart. And it puts the pictures in one area, the decisions in another area, and the feelings in another. Now, remember I said, this isn't actually how it works, but for me to teach you, like meaning the way it actually works is your brain is very messy. Like, have you ever walked into somebody's office and there's just like papers all over the place and it looks like a mess, but you said to them, hey, I need to get the such and such file. And they're like, oh yeah, it's right here. And they can pull it out. They know right wherever, even though to you it looks like a mess, they know where it is. That's really the way that your brain works. Your brain stores stuff like that messy desk. It's just all over the place. But it's, for the sake of me training you, just think of it as it puts the pictures in one area, the decisions in another, and the feelings in another. So what happens then, though, is our job then becomes the reason. So let me pause for a second. Remember I said to you that people will say, I know what I want, but I don't know how to explain it to you, but I'll know it when I see it. That's because of this. That what they're saying to you is, I know what it is I want. I've got the pictures in one area of my brain. I've got the decisions in another area and the feelings in another area. I just don't know how to get them to come back together so that I can explain to you what I want. So our job then, well, everything we're going to talk about for the rest of this today and Thursday is about, our job then becomes helping them to get the pictures, the decisions, and the feelings to reintegrate. We got to get them to come back together. And when we do that, when the pictures, the decisions, and the feelings come back together again, is a term, and I'm going to get this drilled in your head here over the next 2 days, today and to Thursday, it's called crystallization. Crystallization is what we are trying to create. When we are working with a buyer, the main purpose of us doing a buyer presentation or a buyer appointment, and again, that includes sellers, right, is to create crystallization. Now, here's why. Nobody is going to buy anything until they crystallize. So I'm going to say that again. Nobody buys anything until they crystallize. So when you've had a client that you're showing properties to and they don't buy, it's because they haven't crystallized. But the moment somebody crystallizes, they're empowered to buy. So our job in meeting with a client is to create crystallization. Now, this is so crucial. But here's the thing. What I'm showing you in has a very short shelf life if you don't use it. If you don't start to use this skill, you will lose it. And the way you lose it is this. If I were to meet with you guys in a training again in 3 months from now, and I said to you, what is the purpose of us meeting with a buyer or with a client in a consultation? What is the purpose of it? You're going to say something like, oh, to get some information. You're going to say something like that. The true answer is to cause crystallization, because nobody buys until crystallization occurs. But once they crystallize, they're now empowered to buy. So think of crystallization this way. Every time you have ever had an aha moment, that is crystallization. Every aha moment you have ever had is crystallization. But not every time you crystallize is it an aha moment. Okay, so make sure you understand what I'm saying. Every aha moment is crystallization, but not every time somebody crystallizes is it an aha moment. It is possible for somebody to crystallize and just be like, yeah. But it's also possible that it can be this aha moment, okay? And here's the cool thing. When you're working with a client or a potential client and you help them to crystallize, they then love you because they recognize and they're going to feel like you know what you're doing, that they're going to trust you and feel like you really understand and know what you're doing, okay? All right, now here's the next piece of this. The next challenge of this, though, is the way that you and I have been trained to communicate actually blocks crystallization. The way you and I have been trained to communicate blocks crystallization from occurring. So the way that we typically communicate with people is designed actually, not intentionally, but it's designed to block crystallization from occurring, which is why we get so frustrated with clients when they won't buy, is because we're feeling like I'm doing everything. Our experience is buyers are liars. Their experience is that you don't listen and you waste their time. If they feel like you are wasting their time, what are they going to do? That's right. They're going to go somewhere else, right? Okay. So now I'm going to erase this, but keep in mind this features and benefits, okay? And we'll come back to it. All right. Here's the next piece. So now what we're talking about now is how the way you and I have been trained to communicate is typically designed to block crystallization. So I asked you guys to write down 2 or 3 questions that would help you understand what I'm looking for as a buyer. Now, the reason I had you write them down at the start of the class is because you're probably starting to see that you might want to change some of those questions. But for right now, you don't get to. Okay, so that the reason I said write them down. So I'm going to have you guys share with me now, and we may not do everybody, but we'll do a few. What did you write down as your questions that you would ask a buyer that would help you know what they're looking for? So, Jocelyn? Okay, so we're going to do this as if I'm the buyer and you're the agent. Okay, so we're going to go through either your 2 or 3 questions, whatever it is. So you're going to ask me the question, I'm going to respond, and then you ask me the next question. I'm the buyer, you're the agent.
What is most important?
So what's most important in a home for me? I want to get a home that's 1 level, that has the master suite on one side, the other bedrooms on the other. And what's my budget? I don't know. I haven't been pre-approved yet, so I don't know. Okay, so those are your 2. Okay, Trey.
I can't change them.
Nope, you don't get to change them. That's why I had you write them down to begin with.
What are 2 to 3 things that you need in your new house?
So the 2 or 3 things that I would need is a home on 1 level. I want a 4-car garage, and probably either large lot.
Okay, and then location, what you want and do not want.
Location somewhere kind of central part of the valley.
Awesome.
Was that?
And budget.
And budget, yeah, I don't know yet. I haven't been pre-approved. Did you write any down?
I did not.
Okay.
I wrote one before we started.
Okay.
Why have you decided to start your home search now?
Good question. So I have a 2-story and we have the layout of it. The square footage is great, but the layout, I'm kind of like, we got a lot of wasted space. So just the 1? Okay.
I don't know, what are 1 or 2 things that you change by your current home?
The layout of the home is really the only thing I would change.
And then the second question is share more with me about why, what has you guys.
Yeah, just a lot of wasted space. And so we just want to get one that we can have the same amount of space, but in a different manner. Okay, David? Oh, you weren't here, huh?
No.
When I told you guys, were you here?
I was in the Zoom. Well,
Did you write down?
I didn't write it down, but I thought it, and one of them, just because I'm going through this with one of the buyers right now. One of my questions to them was, is the drive, the miles the important or the minutes the importance?
The miles or the minutes?
Yeah.
Probably the minutes. Okay. So, okay, good. Now, nothing wrong with any of the questions you guys asked, but for them all except for one, maybe two, one or two of the questions you guys asked are not designed to create crystallization. Now, I'll come back to the one or two that were in a minute, but so Trey, will you come up and do something with me?
Sure.
You're like, great. Okay. I'm gonna give you a visual demonstration of what communication looks like. So we're gonna play a game. Okay. Now, the rules of the game though are the only person that can talk is the person holding this, okay?
Okay.
Okay, you just lost.
Ah.
Okay, but you get the point, okay? So, but I want to be that clear on like, we're gonna do this exchange where you're gonna be the agent and I'm the buyer, and you're gonna ask me those questions, but you can only talk if you're holding this. So if I'm holding it, you don't get to talk. Okay?
All right, so that's the same questions that I have on this. Okay, what are 2 to 3 things that you would change about your current house?
So we like the square footage, but just the layout is really the main thing we would want to change on it.
Okay, and just should I dig into it or just keep going with my questions? Okay. Oh, what locations do you want to live in and what locations do you not want to live in?
So central part of the valley, I wouldn't want to be too far out where, it takes a long time to get anywhere.
Okay, and what's your budget?
I'm assuming, I don't know, somewhere around $1 million.
Awesome. Well, let's go find you a house then.
Okay.
All right, let's go.
Okay,
I'll go
good.
schedule something.
All right, so don't leave. Okay, so what did you guys notice in that exchange? Well, let me ask it this way. Well, go ahead.
It's just a list of questions.
Yeah, it's surface level questions.
Yes.
There's no follow-up. So as you, I wouldn't feel heard at all. I would just feel like, oh, he's just going through a list. He's really has no idea actually what I want.
Okay, good.
He seems a little bit uncomfortable talking with you and expressing to you when he's trying to find out what you want.
Yeah, and part of that is like, I'm putting him on the spot right now of like, hey, all right, so show him, yeah. But notice that you're right on though, is that who is the pressure on in that conversation? To do what?
Big.
Yeah, to come up with the next question, right? So the way that you and I typically communicate, and most of the questions that we had are either closed-ended or yet one word answers for the most part, or even like what Mariano did of, we say stuff like this: what's more important to you, the miles or the minutes? Well, if I'm that person, what am I left with?
2 options.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. So if you've heard me do this, don't participate. But if you haven't heard me, then participate. If I wanted to know what was going on a mile down the road, should I ask a giraffe or a turtle? So who has not heard me do this before? Okay.
I know that one.
Okay, so if you haven't heard me do it, participate. If you have, then don't. So if I wanted to know what's going on a mile down the road, should I ask a giraffe or a turtle? A giraffe, okay.
A giraffe.
Giraffe,
Giraffe.
okay.
I want to say turtle.
I know.
but-
Say, I don't care, say turtle then.
Giraffe.
A giraffe? Okay, what about you guys on Zoom that have not heard me do it? You gonna ask a giraffe or a turtle? Has everyone on Zoom heard me do it?
Sorry, I've heard you do this one.
All right. What'd you say, Jeremy?
Oh, it's that we've heard it.
Oh, okay. All right. Now, what's gonna happen if you ask a giraffe or a turtle what's going on a mile down the road? Like for real, if you walked up to a giraffe or a turtle and said, what's going on a mile down the road, what's gonna happen?
They don't speak.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
so for real then, are you ever gonna ask, like, when I said to you, if you wanted to know what was going on a mile down the road, are you gonna ask a giraffe or a turtle? Why did you not say I wouldn't ask either? Like for real,
It's
why?
an option. I was restricted to those. You
Okay,
can't do like that.
Good. So guess what happens, and I'm sorry, Lionel. Guess what happens if somebody says to me, what's more important to you, the miles or the minutes?
But choose one.
What if neither are relevant?
I feel like
Don't
they
know.
They're
they
still gonna choose.
one.
For me, when you asked me the question, I was almost like, I don't know. But then I stopped and thought, now watch this though. Hold on, watch this. Is that important to you?
To me as the agent,
No.
or the buyer.
For you just personally, forget being an agent or a buyer. The miles and minutes.
Yes,
Now, I partially know where this is coming from, because where do you drive from every day to get here?
Santa Clara.
So part of what's going on in his mind is he's driving from Santa Quinn to here every day. So what's gonna be is that part of why you're thinking that?
Her, but part of the reason that I also bought my house where I'm at, that was a huge deciding factor. If I could have bought in Elk Ridge, which is closer in distance to Provo,
But longer in minutes.
but longer in minutes to get to the freeway from
Yep.
Elk Ridge to the I-15 is like 20 minutes.
Correct.
From my house to the I-15 was 3 minutes, and from there I can just hit 80
Exactly.
and there.
Yeah. So, but notice, here's what I want you guys to notice, is typically if we ask somebody do you want this or this? They're gonna choose, just like I got you to choose between the giraffe and the turtle, even though it might not be relevant. Because the truth is, none of you would have asked either of them, right? But because I said, which would you ask? You felt like, well, I gotta choose one, and I guess the giraffe has a long neck, so giraffe. I mean, right? That's kind of, so that's what tends to happen, which blocks crystallization. We find out information that then we use that information, and they then feel like you didn't listen and we wasted their, because why do you keep talking about the drive when maybe I don't care about if it's miles or minutes? Like, does that make sense? Okay, so now watch this. The reason I've had you stay up here. So we're gonna do it again.
Okay.
This time I'm the agent, you're the client.
Okay.
Okay, now watch, I'm gonna show you and do it differently, which is designed to create crystallization. And I'm gonna show you what this looks like. So the same thing, pay attention to the passing of this back and forth. Okay, and notice what happens. So just kind of pay attention and then share with me what you guys notice. You ready?
Yep.
All right. So Trey, first, are you okay with doing this?
Yes.
Okay. So describe for me your ideal home.
Probably I want a 2-story, so main floor, upper floor, and then a basement with probably like 2,500 square feet and then an attached garage. So
Okay, cool. So 2-story attached garage. Okay, cool. What else?
I think a big lot just so I can have a backyard and have some room back there as well.
Okay, so a big yard with big backyard, big lot.
Yeah.
Okay, sure. What else?
Maybe something a little more newer. I don't really want to fix it up at all. Just kind of move in ready and just kind of live, I guess, instead of having renovations.
Okay, so move-in ready. You don't want to do a lot of work to get it going. Cool. This is great. I'm getting a good idea. What else?
Maybe something closer, like neighborhood friendly, and something to a good school, like somewhere my kids could go to a good school.
Okay, so good neighborhood with for your kids to have a good school. Awesome, good. Keep going. Tell me more.
Maybe in a cul-de-sac, just so that's not on a busy road, so I can just kind of keep out traffic, something more private in a sense.
Okay, so cul-de-sac, give you a little bit more privacy, which you're doing a really, really good job. Tell me more.
I don't know if there's anything.
Okay,
else.
good, perfect. Now, I was gonna keep doing that until he said, I can't think of anything else. I don't know what else to tell you. Now tell me what you guys observed from that. Yeah, I got way more detail that had nothing to do with me, right? Okay, Justin.
What they say with your work, or like pay attention to what you're listening.
Good.
To what they're saying.
Good. So we're going to talk more about that in just a minute. But yeah, that's right. I repeated back what he said so he would know I was hearing him. And then I just said, what else? Or keep going. Okay, good. What else? Somebody else had a hand. No?
He built his house pretty much, like. Described it, showed like.
Okay, good. And did you guys pay attention to like look at the difference of the way, and I probably should have pointed this out to you before, of like, did he have to actually stop and think?
Yes.
Versus if we do how many bedrooms?
3,
How many bathrooms?
2,
Okay, how many car garage?
2,
How many square feet?
2,500,
All right, where do you want to be at?
Sandy.
Like, okay, look, I got information, but did he have to really think on any of that? Versus when hey, you're doing a great job. What else are you looking for? Now, the other thing I probably should have started this with was asking who in here is thinking about buying a home. Because are you thinking about buying a house right now?
I want to, but yeah, it's kind of iffy. It's not really like a.
So it's not something that's
It's not, yeah.
Yeah, so which that makes a difference in this as well. When I have somebody who's thinking about it and I do this, like they give me even more detail than what he's just given. Does that make sense? So keep in mind, so thank you. Give Trey a hand. Thank you. Awesome. So keep in mind that what is the purpose of us doing this? See, you guys have forgotten already.
To learn how to sell a house.
No, it's not to learn how to sell a house.
Create crystallization.
That's the answer. Remember I said you will forget. The whole purpose of you meeting with a client and asking questions is to create crystallization. I'm going to act over today and tomorrow or Thursday. Probably the way I'm going to start class on Thursday is why are we doing this whole thing? And the answer is
Crystallization.
okay, good. So just know, like, and I feel a little bad that Jason taught you guys on the lead generation class, because generally I pound you the same way I'm going to pound you on this. On lead generation, I pound you on what is the purpose of prospecting?
Crystallization.
No,
I don't know.
to set an appointment. So usually I would have drilled you guys on that and then been like, okay, now we're going to do the same thing with this. What is the purpose of us doing a needs analysis, meeting with a client?
Crystallization.
To cause crystallization. And why? See, you guys have forgotten.
What was your first initial question with them? I didn't get it because I was trying to.
Yeah, I'm going to give it to you.
Okay.
Yes, because they're not going to buy until they crystallize. So the purpose of us meeting with a client is to cause crystallization, because they're not going to buy. Now, remember, that includes the seller. They're not going to buy until they do. So we've got to cause crystallization. Now, here's the thing. If you forget that's the purpose of us doing this, it'll totally change the way you approach it. But as long as you keep that in mind, is I got to create crystallization, you'll win. You will win. But the moment you forget that it's to cause crystallization, you'll get a whole bunch of information. But if they don't crystallize, they're not buying. Nobody buys until they crystallize. We good? Okay, next. So now let's go to what you asked. So here's the difference. The way that you and I have been trained to communicate was more from the standpoint of asking yes, no questions, or do you want this or that type of stuff, which I want to be really clear. There are times to do that. Like, I want to make sure you know there are times to do that. But if we want to create crystallization, we don't start there. We can finish there, but we don't start there. We have to start by staying more neutral. See, did I project anything on him? Meaning, like, what I see a lot of times people will do is they'll say stuff like, do you want to get a 2-story or a Rambler? Well, again, that's back to the giraffe or the turtle. They're going to probably answer the question, even though it might not be relevant. Now, occasionally you'll get somebody that when I do that exercise in here, occasionally I'll get somebody that says, well, I'm not going to ask a giraffe or a turtle because they can't talk. Like, occasionally somebody will do that. And same thing with you and working with your clients. Occasionally, if you gave them, if you said, what's more important, miles or minutes, they might go, I don't really care. It doesn't matter either way. Like, and maybe they say, because I like to listen to audiobooks. So actually the longer it takes, the better for me, because I'll listen to, like, you might get somebody that says that. But more likely than not, if you give options, they're gonna choose from the options. And that's not gonna create crystallization. That's like, I cannot underscore this enough. You're trying to create crystallization because nobody's gonna buy until they do it. So how do we do that? So the way we do it is through this. It's through something called directives. Okay? Directives are designed to get people to crystallize. Okay? So here's where you were asking, Mariano. So the question that I always want to start with is going to start with describe for me. And then I usually say your ideal home. But if you were using this outside of real estate though, which I use this with my kids, which I only have one still at home, but my oldest, when he was growing up, I have a story, and maybe I'll tell you, maybe I won't, we'll see as we get into this, but I have a scenario that was not real estate related where I used this with him of, hey, so describe for me, he was, I'll just give you the brief version of it. Came walking in the door one day, slams the door and yells out, I hate Tanner. And my wife, and I wasn't home, but I was here at work, and my wife says, okay, what's going on with Tanner? I hate Tanner and I'm never playing with him again. Well, what tends to happen then is we assume we know. And so here's where this gets us in trouble. This whole thing blocks crystallization is we have a tendency to assume that we know why something is. And then we will ask questions in such a way to get the answer we want. So what happened is he comes in, he slams the door, yells, I hate Tanner. My wife says, why? And then she proceeds to ask some questions. The questions that she asked were all designed around getting him to tell her that the reason that he was mad at Tanner was the reason she assumed he was mad at Tanner. Is that, you following me? And we do this all the time, guys, all the time. We ask questions in such a way to get to what we already assume so that we can say, I knew it. Most of the time when we say, I knew it, it's because we asked questions in such a way to get them to say what we wanted them to say. So my wife did that. So then she calls up Tanner's mom and says, hey, so I guess we got some problems between our boys and blah, blah, blah. And it just wasn't going away. Like day after day after day was, I hate Tanner. I don't want anything to do with Tanner. I hate Tanner. I hate Tanner. So I've said to my wife, okay, I'm going to fix this problem. But what I need though is for you to not say anything. So just let me have a conversation, but you can't interrupt. Now, because again, the way you and I have been trained to do this, typically, if stop and pay attention the next time you're having a conversation with somebody, most of the time while that person is talking, you're thinking of the next thing you're going to say. You're not actually listening to them. You're thinking how you're going to respond next. So I said, just don't interrupt. Let's just listen to what he has to say. So I sit down with him and I said, hey, so describe for me what happened that day that made you so mad at Tanner. And he says, well, we were on the bus coming home from school. And just let me give you guys the background a little bit on this. So here's my neighborhood here. You pulled in and here was the bus stop here and here's our house. Tanner's house is up here and the bus would stop up closer to his house. So there's a bus stop here and one up here somewhere that was closer to his house. And that particular day, what happened is Tanner had gotten off the bus and started to walk with my son, Douglas, towards our house, which Douglas had learned when that happened, that meant Tanner was coming over to the house to play. And so what I said to him is, so tell me what happened. Describe for me what led up to you being mad at Tanner. And he said, well, I got off the bus and Tanner got off the bus. And as soon as he got off the bus, I knew he thought he was going to come over to the house and play with me. And I don't want to play with Tanner today. He said, I didn't want to play with him that day. And so I just ran into the house and slammed the door to say, I'm not playing with Tanner. And I said, okay, well, so I did the same thing. So you're frustrated with Tanner and tell me more. I did the same thing. So tell me more. Well, he just does that every day. Like he doesn't even ask. He just gets off the bus and comes home, and then I'm stuck playing with him, even if I don't want to play with him. And I said, okay, so if I understand you correctly, what I'm hearing you say is that really you don't hate Tanner. You just didn't want to play with him that day. And you didn't like the fact that he doesn't ask you before he gets off the bus if you want to play. He just gets off the bus and now you're trapped. You have to play. Yeah, that's exactly what it was. And I go, okay, well, what if we did this? What if you just told Tanner every day after school, I have to do a chore before I can play? So you can't just get off the bus with me because I have to go home and do a chore first. And my wife's sitting there going, yeah, I like this. So he goes, yeah, that would work. So I go, okay, so now you can be friends with Tanner again because you just can tell him, I have to do a chore first, so you'll have to just call me if you want to still play on that day. Or if he gets off the bus, you can just say, I got to do a chore first, sorry. And he goes, yeah, that'll work. They were friends again. Okay, so that's the idea of this, is we have to start with a describe for me your ideal home. Now, some of the other directives that we can use look like this. Share with me. Tell me about. Or help me understand. All of those are directives. And think of it this way. The way that your brain works is like a computer. Your brain works like a computer. When given an instruction, it's going to respond according to the information that it's given, just like we did. And I already showed you guys with the, would you ask a giraffe or a turtle? Your brain works like a computer. If I gave you kind of a choice, two choices, and your brain goes, okay, I got to choose one. And so it chose one, even though it didn't make any sense. Okay. So we're going to start with describe for me your ideal home. So it's a directive. We're directing them. And think of it this way. A lot of times I like to refer to this, the directives, as tool number one. So we're going to use 3 different tools. Tool number 1 is describe for me your ideal home. It's designed to access this part of the brain. So remember, your brain stores the information in these discrete locations. So what we've got to do is we got to create crystallization. The way we're going to do it is with 3 tools. One tool that's designed around getting them picturing it. The second tool is going to be about the decisions, which we probably won't get into this today. We're pretty much going to cover this and then call it good. Then on Thursday, we're going to talk about the decisions and the feelings portion of this, okay? But there's some subsets to this. Now, so which actually the first thing you saw me do with Trey up here is permission. So let's even put that up at the top here. We always are going to start with permission. And on Thursday, I'm going to give you guys some scripts that have the scripts you want to use that has permission. But here's what it sounds like. Is Derek, in order for us to determine whether or not I can help you, I need to ask you some questions. Some of them may feel personal, maybe things you haven't considered. Is that going to be okay? Yep. So that's the first thing is that I don't know if you guys caught it, but the first thing I said to Trey when I was the agent is, are you okay with doing this? So I totally shortcut it, but I was just saying, are you okay with doing this? In essence, I was getting permission first because you guys noticed already, I said, describe for me your ideal home. And then the reason I use this passing the baton or the marker is because it gives a good visual of the conversation of me saying to him, describe for me your ideal home. Then after that, similar to what I told you guys that I said to my wife, don't talk. That's why I say you can't talk unless you're holding this, is I handed it to him. Now, you're not going to really do that with a client, FYI. I always worry that somebody's going to tell their client, okay, we're going to sit down and talk about what you're looking for in a home. But the only person that can talk is the one holding the marker. Like, don't do that. Like, I can't imagine what that would be. But the reason I do it in this class is to show you, like, once you hand it to them, you don't get to say anything until when? That's right, till they figuratively, so in your conversation with them, they will figuratively hand it back to you. And usually what that's going to look like is them looking at you kind of, and they stop talking. Is Now, the reason I say that though is and the reason I like to use this, Trey didn't do it, but sometimes with people, you'll say, describe for me your ideal home. Very common actually for them to do it. And what Trey did to begin with is they described the house at this level. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, 2-car garage. Like they're gonna tell you just kind of rapid fire. We want 2,500 square feet, 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, 2-car garage, 1/4 acre lot. Like they're giving you that, which is all reasonable, logical, all that stuff, right? What happens though is the moment that you say to them, okay, so 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, 2-car garage, what else? So that's the next piece of this is the next part of tool number 1 here is what we would call a prompter. Destroyed that. Prompter, okay? A prompter is going to be what else? Keep going. Say more. Something like that, okay? What else? Keep going, say more. And what we're just doing is prompting them to keep talking. Now, Trey, when I did that, when I said to you, so, hey, you're doing a great job, what else? In your brain, what kind of was going on? And I don't know, maybe you'll be like, I don't know, but.
Initially, I kind of felt like I just had like a blueprint of the house, and you said what else, and I just kept building onto the house. So it's kind of just going more in depth and even more detail in my mind, just because I honestly feel like I didn't really even know what I really wanted, and then you kept asking, I just kept building in my mind.
Yeah, and so ultimately, basically, you had to then, it forced you to now think about what you wanted,
Yep.
right? See, that's what initially, they're just kind of, they think what we want to hear is 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, 2-car garage in this area for this square footage and this price, and then bam, okay, now let's go look. But the moment that we say, hey, okay, that's great, but what else do you want? Or tell me more. Keep going on it. But you have to do though, these, I'm just going to put it here as PF, but PF stands for positive feedback. You have to give that positive feedback. Hey, you're doing a really good job. Oh, wow, that's awesome. That's exciting. Wow, really? Oh, cool. Like, so as they're describing it up here, I'm going to be responding with, oh, yeah. Oh, sure. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. You want to give positive feedback because by doing that, lets them know they're doing exactly what you want them to do. And then you can say, so that when they figuratively hand you the baton, I can then say, oh, Trey, you're doing a really good job. I'm getting a good picture of the 3 bedrooms, the 2 baths, but tell me more. Well, what happens then is they kind of go, oh, like you're really interested. You really want to know, which forces them to access this part of the brain where the pictures, somewhat the decisions too, but mostly where the pictures are. Because they, like you said, it's kind of this blueprint that you kind of was like, okay, they start thinking about what they've pictured their house looking like, and they're going to now start to tell me. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do is then use, when they're doing that, I'm going to use this. Now I'm going to give you another one of these on Thursday, but this, when they're describing it, I am going to be writing down the features that they talk about. Before you even ask. All right. So for you guys that are on Zoom, this is what we're looking at. And I will actually send in the email tomorrow. Hope they can see it. I'll send in the email tomorrow about the class on Thursday. I'll attach the other one so that you guys that are on Zoom have it. But what we want to do is as they're describing the features, because that's usually what they're going to do is I say, describe for me your ideal home. They start telling me the features that they want. So I'm going to write those down in these boxes here. In fact, let's just do it this way. So picture it that I've got, which FYI, you could always just grab a blank piece of paper and go like this, and you've created what I gave to you. Now, What's gonna happen though, is they're gonna start to describe this house to me. Whatever feature they talk about, I'm gonna now put it in here. So if they said, so Trade said big backyard, I'm gonna just write down in here, big backyard. And you can develop shorthand. For me, I usually just would do BY was backyard for me. If they were talking about backyard, I would have just written big BY. And I know all that matters on this is that you know what you've written down. Nobody else has to understand it. So as long as you can interpret it afterwards, that's all that matters. But if he says big backyard, I'm gonna write it down there. If he says then anything about the kitchen, then I would write it in this one. Then if the next thing he talks about is the garage, I'm gonna come over to this one. If he then talks about the bedrooms, then I'm gonna go here. Does that make sense? And anything he says about any of those features, I'm gonna just keep writing it in here. And then if he goes over to the garage and starts talking more about the garage, I'm gonna, because remember, I say, hey, you're doing great, tell me more. If he starts talking more about the garage, then I'm gonna just write down more about the garage. And then as he stops and figuratively hands me the baton, hey, you're doing a really good job, what else do I need to know? And then he's gonna go, oh, well, you need to make sure you know about the basement. And then he starts talking about the basement over here. So I'm gonna do all of that. So whatever they say about it goes there. Now, you will notice on this paper that I gave to you guys, I don't have any features written in there. Now, here's the first test. Now, this is a test of me, not a test of you. So if you guys don't get it right, I failed, you didn't. Because I got to see how well I've trained you, okay? Why do I not, and I don't think I've trained you very good, by the way, so I'm not expecting much. Why do I not have like written on there, kitchen, garage, basement, neighborhood, location, or whatever?
And those would be our features that we want in a home, and not theirs.
Close, you're very close.
Goes back to the draft earlier, just kind of like what features matter to you in the kitchen. And then
Perfect.
kind of-
That, yes, good. Here's the thing. So it's a little deeper than that, actually, but you are on the right track too. If I have written here, well, let me ask you this. Did I ask Trey anything about the kitchen? Why? Because he didn't bring it up. But guess what? If I had it written on the piece of paper, guess what I would do? I would go, hey, so tell me about the kitchen. Now, and if now watch, tell me about the kitchen.
Newer appliances.
See, he's gonna answer stuff about the kitchen. Now, watch this. Now let me show you. Remember I said they feel like we waste their time? I'm gonna show you how this comes about. Let's say that the kitchen is important to me. If a kitchen in the house is one of the most important features, which for me, actually, it was always the garage. Like, so when I was working with a buyer before I learned all this, I would have said, hey, so, let's talk about your garage. Like, how many car garage do you want? Like, we totally would have talked about the garage. So, but now let's say that the kitchen's important to me. So I say, hey, so let's talk about the kitchen. Tell me about the kitchen. Make stuff up. I don't care.
I want like black granite countertops and white cabinets.
So now notice he's giving me this stuff, but the truth is, do you really care?
Not really.
He doesn't care about the kitchen. But if I do, if I care about the kitchen, when we go out looking at houses, guess what I'm going to talk about in the house? The kitchen. But I'm also going to be looking for the black countertops, the white cat, and then I'm going to be like, Trey, like I found some houses, but like they don't have the white cabinets or whatever. And he'd probably be like, well, that's okay, because he doesn't care, right? But notice if the kitchen's important to me though, when we go in the house, I'm going to start talking about the kitchen. And if he doesn't really care about the kitchen, he's going to feel like, why are you constantly worried about the kitchen? And this, remember I said, is it okay if we let them buy the house they want, not the one you think they should buy? This is what I'm talking about, is ultimately, and this is a little ironic, but I remember as a brand new agent talking to an agent at the office and saying, like, what should I talk about when we go in the house? And I remember the agent saying, don't talk. Like, to me as the agent, don't talk. Like, just let them look at the house. And I remember feeling like, yeah, but then I feel like I'm not doing my job and they're gonna think I don't know anything. But I understand now why he was saying that. I didn't understand all this back then. But I understand now why he was like saying, don't talk, like, and I'm not saying you can't talk, but just know you got to make sure you're talking about the stuff that they care about. Well, how do I know that? The only way I'm going to know that is through this process, because then you can talk to them about those things. Okay. Now, what I'm going to show you on Thursday, though, is we're going to go through and we're going to talk about how what you want to. Remember, I said to you, I drew up here the features and benefits. So we had the features and then I had benefits here. Once we land on a benefit, I'm never going to talk about the feature again. I only talk about the benefits. So when you go to then show them a property, you talk about the benefits that they're looking for, not the feature. Because here's the thing. Let's say, so let's go, since I keep using the garage as an example, let's say that I'm a buyer and I just said to you, I want a 3-car garage. And then you go out and look for homes with 3-car garages. But if you haven't done this process, which I love how Brenda said it before, is I always ask them why. You got to, if you have, but most agents don't, unfortunately. So they just go out and look for 3-car garages. Well, if you had asked me why I wanted 3-car garage, and I said, well, because I got bikes and a lawnmower and da. Do I really need 3-car garage? What else would work? Yeah, a 2-car garage with a shed. And that's where this whole thing of buyers are liars comes from, is they say they want a 3-car garage because they think that's the only way they can meet the need. And then they realize, oh, I could get a shed and store the lawnmower and the bikes and all that kind of stuff in there. Therefore, a 2-car garage would work to put my cars in, but I need the shed. That's why you have to ask, hey, tell me more. Say more about that. Does that make sense? Then we'll get into way more detail. But once I land on the benefit of that garage, then when I go show the property, I only talk about the benefit, don't talk about the feature. Because no different than me saying home high on a hill with a view of the city lights, and then I bought the one in the canyon, remember this morning? Same concept. The reason I bought it is because it met the need or the benefit I was looking for. See, they're not buying a home high on a hill with a view of the city lights. They're buying the benefit that home high on a hill with a view of the city lights provides for them. And if they can get it met, that benefit or that need met in some other feature, they'll buy it. Because it's the benefit they're buying, not the feature. It's just over here, that's one way to meet the need. You follow me? All right. Now, let me just reinforce one other thing and then we're going to wrap up for the day. People buy in 2s and 3s. So I want to make sure you get that. That they buy in 2s and 3s. So there are 2 or 3 benefits that they're looking for in the home. And if you show them a house that has the 2 or the 3 benefits, they will buy it. If they have 2 or 3, let's just say 2. If they're looking for a home that has 2 specific benefits in it, and you only find 1, they won't buy it. If it's a husband and a wife or a couple or whatever that's buying, and they buy in 2s and 3s. So he needs 2 or 3, she needs 2 or 3. If you go find a house and it has her 3, but his only has 1, he won't buy it. She'll love it, want to buy it, and he'll be like, yeah, but it doesn't, or I don't know, I'm not sure. Same vice versa. They have to. So part of it is you got to figure out what are the 2 or 3 benefits and figure out how to then mesh those together. And if you can't, then you get them divorced and you sell 2 houses. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. All right. Questions, comments, thoughts?
You have to provide what both people want, otherwise the sale's not gonna happen.
That's right.
Everybody has to be happy.
That's right. Now,
Man and wife.
and here's the other thing. Keep in mind this. Initially, when you're doing this phase, remember there's 3 tools and we're only on tool number 1. We'll do tools 2 and 3 on Thursday. But during this phase, when they're first filling, I call this filling the grid. When you are filling the grid, everything feels like it's important. And in fact, at some point, when you have this thought, and if you've already had it, then tell me. But some point along the way, you're gonna feel like they're gonna describe this and that house doesn't exist. Has anybody had that thought yet of what if they describe something that doesn't exist? So here's the answer to that. Features have a price tag. Benefits don't. And what I mean by that is you can meet the benefit in any price range. Whatever benefit they're looking for, you will find it in any price range. You can find the benefit in every price range. You might not be able to find the feature in that price range that they're describing, but they're not buying the feature, they're buying the benefit. Meaning, so sometimes what will happen is people will feel like, well, what if they describe something they can't afford? Don't worry, because they're not going to buy the feature, but the benefit that the thing they describe that they can't afford will have a benefit to it. And here's what I'm telling you. So let's say that somebody came in and they had a budget that only is going to get them into a condo, but they're describing $1 million house. They're still, whatever features they describe in that $1 million house, the condo has to have the same benefit that that feature would provide, or they won't buy it. Because it's the benefit they're looking for, not the feature. Now, with that being said, do not go to somebody and say, hey, price, like notice up here, I'm never gonna say, hey, pretend price is not the issue. Tell me about the perfect house. Like, I'm not doing that. I am saying, as described for me, the ideal home, and most people will be realistic on it into what their price range is. But just, I want to make sure you guys recognize it doesn't matter. And initially, when they're first describing it, it feels like I'm never going to find this. But what I'm going to show you on Thursday is we're going to distill this down to the 2 or 3 that are the most important. And we're going to figure out what the benefit of those 2 or 3 are. And I'm telling you, they will, whatever price range they're in, the property they buy will have those benefits, or they won't buy it. Because they buy in 2s and 3s. So each person, it's either going to be 2 or 3. So it's going to vary. I'll tell you on Thursday the story of me buying the house that I'm in, because part of that process is where I really learned all of this. And what I learned along the way is the things that I initially described here. Like, for example, I said I wanted a 1 acre lot, yet I bought a home on a 1/4 acre. You would have said buyers are liars if you didn't understand this process. But once you understand the process, the benefits that I was looking for in a 1 acre lot, I got it in the 1/4 acre. And I'll explain the details of that to you on Thursday. But I still bought the benefit. It just didn't have. My assumption was in the beginning, it could only be met in a feature that had a 1 acre lot. But when I found out I could meet the benefit in a 1/4 acre, that was good. I bought it.
No brainer.
Yep. Make sense? All right. Any thoughts, questions? Okay. So Thursday then. So on Thursday, what I'll do is just a quick overview of this, like really fast to remind you. But what's the purpose of all this? All right. I got like 3 of you, so half the class.
Crystallization.
Yes, Miriam, you're the best. All right. Thanks for being here. So Thursday, 10 o'clock again. I'll do just a quick overview, and I'll probably start the class by saying, what's the purpose of all this? And we'll see how many of you remember. Okay, and then what we'll do then is on Thursday, we'll explain how to go from here to tool number 2 and number 3. And I'll get you a copy of the scripts and everything that goes with it. Sound good? Okay, thanks for being here.
Thank you for
Have a
the
good day.
class.
Thank you, Russ.
Welcome.
Listener,
Thank you.
buyer, she said she wanted 2 master bedrooms. Why? I don't know, but I didn't ask anymore.
Didn't ask any other questions.
What came to mind is like, well, do you have the money to buy a house like that?
Yeah, see, that's the problem, is that's what happens, is we tend to immediately go to, can you afford it?
Yeah,
Rather than, okay, well, what's the benefit? Like, we need to start thinking of what's the benefit of it. Because if you can nail down to what's the benefit she's looking for, you can potentially find a property that doesn't have, I'm not saying for sure. There
Right.
are scenarios, like, let me make sure I'm clear. There are scenarios that they do have to have that feature. Because that's maybe the only way to get to the benefit, but it's pretty rare.
I mean,
More,
2 master bedrooms.
yeah,
Maybe the size. That's what she's
could be
after,
the size, could
But I didn't
be,
ask.
could be privacy, could be like, who knows? And that's just it. The key is to dig down on that, to get to what the benefit is. Because once you know the benefit, so let's go back to the 3-car garage and me. As soon as you know, well, I've got lawnmower and the bikes and da. And if somebody then said, well, what if you had a 2-car garage, but it had a big shed in the back that you could put all that? And all of a sudden they go, oh yeah, that would work. See, so part of what our job is to figure out what's the benefit, and then what other ways can we meet that benefit? Through what other features could we meet that benefit? Because as long as the benefit's met, they'll take it.
Yeah, because one of the customers also, he wants a swimming pool. And after a while of talking to him, I figured out that he has a sore back. And that's why he wants a swimming pool.
Yeah.
He wants an indoor pool because he just wants to exercise there instead of going to therapy somewhere else.
So as you're saying that, for me, remember I said there's 15 different benefits. To me, that's one of 2. It's either health. Health is one of the benefits. The other is convenience.
Right?
And it could be his health, but it also might be about the convenience, and we'll talk more about that on Thursday. But once you land on that, then if it's convenience, then he doesn't need the pool, he just needs convenience. Make sense? Okay, cool. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for the class.
You're welcome.